Today's Torah study has been dedicated by Corey Nadel in loving honor of her son Brett on the occasion of his birthday, as well as in honor of her own birthday. Corey, we wish you Shana Satzlacha, a year of health, happiness, success in all of your endeavors. To you, Corey, thank you for sponsoring today's Torah study in honor of your birthday, son's birthday. Okay, I'm looking forward to this beautiful chapter of Tanya today. Just waiting for everybody to join us here. I'm going to start off with today's Hayom Yom, which is as follows. Today's the 8th of Tammuz. We find that God's love for our father Abraham was mainly because of his influence upon others. The Torah states so explicitly that notwithstanding all the tremendous achievements of Abraham, the most important achievement of Abraham for which God chose him, for which God exhibited such great love to him, was Abraham's influence upon others, quote, because he will command his children and his household, because he will command his Yitzaveh, his children and his household. The word Yitzaveh, command, here connotes bringing into a communion with God. The word Yitzaveh is the same word as mitzvah, which means to connect, because he will not just command his household and his family in the service of God, but because he will actually connect everybody else with God, communion with God, all of Abraham's great divine service. His avodah, in the tests, the 10 tests to which he was subjected, cannot be compared to the greatness of his commanding others and bringing them into communion, i.e., to his bringing merit to others. So the crowning achievement of Abraham was his influence upon others, notwithstanding the great tests that he stood for. You know, the test, for example, the 10th test, which was the binding of his son upon the altar. That was a very difficult test. The leaving of the land which God had just sent him to because of a famine. All of the 10 tests of Abraham don't hold a candle to Abraham's achievement in his influence upon others. And a very powerful lesson for all of us in our ability to influence others. And the first thing you can do today to influence others is to share this video on Facebook, to share the teachings of Tanya with your friends and family, just like Abraham. So I'd like to ask you to share the video, to like the video, and to subscribe to our channel on Facebook at facebook.com/Jewish Gardens, as well as on youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. L'chaim. And with that, friends, good morning, Marty and Devorah. I am very excited to enter the chapter 33 of Tanya, which to me is one of my most favorite chapters of Tanya. I would think that all the chapters of Tanya are my favorite, but chapter 33 has always held a very dear part in my heart. Good morning, Corey. And there you are. You just joined us, Corey, just to point out, to thank you, Corey, for being today's sponsor of today's Torah study in honor of your birthday, in honor of your son Brett's birthday. Mazel tov to you both. May the merit of today's Torah study serve to shower you and Brett with tremendous blessing of gesund, health, of parnasa, livelihood, and nachas, all the blessings that you need in a revealed way, b'toiv hanira v'anigla, in goodness that is revealed and apparent. Thank you very much for supporting today's Torah study, Corey. You can dedicate a day, a week, or a month of Torah study at jewishgardens.com/donate, or by calling our office at 561-624-2223. So today's chapter of Tanya, here's why I'm so excited about it. You know, the Rebbe came out with a campaign, a mitzvah campaign, which was to teach verses of Torah to all Jewish boys and girls. And these are verses that they would learn from a very, very young age. You'll look at my Devorah, she can barely talk. She's just barely turned 2 years old. And she's out there saying, Torah, Tziva, Lanu, the Torah that Moses commanded us is the birthright of every single Jew. These are the 12 Torah phrases that the Rebbe selected from the entirety of Torah to teach children, to impress upon them their connection with God from the earliest of ages. There are only there's 3 of those verses that come from Tanya. 3 of the 12 verses come from Tanya, and 2 of those verses come from chapter 33 in Tanya. Because chapter 33, to me, good morning, Mickey. Chapter 33 to me captures the essence of Judaism. Friends, that's what this is. Remember when the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad, the first Rebbe of Chabad, when he wrote the book of Tanya, about 250 years ago, a little bit more than that, when he wrote the book of Tanya, and it was shown to some of his peers, one of them famously remarked, how could you capture, it was remarkable how the Alter Rebbe was able to capture such a great God into such a small book, just 53 chapters. But in chapter 33 of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe captures the essence of Judaism. That's the 11th of the 12 verses that the Rebbe teaches to children. And the 12th verse also comes from chapter 33 of Tanya. The 12th verse speaks of how we can find joy. And these are the two themes which I want to bring out to you today from chapter 33 of Tanya. Number one, how this chapter represents the essence and brings out the essence of Judaism. The one thing that we need to know about Yiddishkeit. If we know this one thing about Judaism, everything else will automatically follow through. And the second teaching of chapter 33 is how we can shift from a life that's meaningless to a life that's meaningful, to be able to find joy through finding purpose in our flawed lives. That is the second part of chapter 33. I don't think we can have time for the second part of chapter 33 today because we have so much to talk about in the first half of the chapter, which is capturing the essence of Judaism. Now I'm going to quote to you that verse, which again is quoted, comes from chapter 33 of Tanya. It's a verse that we teach our children from a very early age as instructed to us by the Rebbe. The verse goes as follows. V'zeh kol ha'adam, and this is the entirety of man. V'sachlis briyasa. In fact, I'm going to show you where it is just in case you have the book with you. This is the Practical Tanya. I'm going to show you where it is before I quote it. Chapter 33. Here it is. It's at the second paragraph of chapter 30, of page 372. So if you turn to page 372 to the second paragraph, you can follow along with me. The 11th of the 12 verses that the Rebbe instructed to teach every single Jewish boy and girl. If nothing else, this is what they need to know. Here it is. V'zeh kol ha'adam, and this is the entirety of man, the entire purpose of man. V'sachlis briyasoi, and the purpose for which he was created. Uvriyas kol ha'olamos, and the creation of all the worlds. Elyonim, the higher worlds, v'sachtainim, and the lower worlds. Liyos loi, dira zu b'sachtainim, for him to have this home in the lowly worlds. If we are able to capture in our mind how God has a home in this lowly world, we will have fulfilled the purpose for which we were created, for which the entire universe was created. Now, I know what you're thinking, Corey. I know you think you've heard this before. But today in chapter 33, we're going to take it to a whole new level, which is surprisingly practical. Something which we can really relate to. You can truly change the world in the next 30 minutes. And that's what we're going to be doing today. So the flow of today's chapter, chapter 33, is as follows. The first 24 chapters of Tanya were talking to us about how we can master the inner struggle that each and every one of us has within us, the conflict between our godly soul and our natural soul. That's what the first 24 chapters of Tanya was about. The short way, the long way, how you can do that, how you can reach self-mastery. That will take you the rest of your life to be able to master. But we're moving on. From chapter 26 to 33, where we are now, we've been working through specific obstacles in our path. Specifically, the number one obstacle we've been dealing with was sadness and apathy. How do you stay upbeat? How do you stay positive? How can you stay joyous in the face of your personal sins, in the face of the challenges, the tragedies that come your way, and the struggles and obstacles that God puts in your path? So that we spoke about in chapters 26 and chapters 27, but still you might be a little depressed. a little down at least, maybe not depressed. In chapter 31, we said not depressed, but bitter. We spoke about the very important difference between sadness, which is negative, to bitterness, which is a positive emotion, a motivating emotion. But in chapter 33, the Alter Rebbe says, no, we still need a little bit more joy. It's fundamental, it's critical and vital to be able to win any battle that you're upbeat. You know, if you have two wrestlers in a ring, even if one is stronger than the other, if the stronger one is a little down, he's not going to win. If the weaker one is more primed and positive and upbeat and motivated and fired up, that's the one that's going to win the wrestling match. So right now, chapter 33, the Alter Rebbe introduces us to this idea. He says, listen, guys, we're going to need more happiness. How can I bring more happiness, more joy, more purpose to my life? And that is how to arouse joy within when we're overcome by sadness from our own spiritual failings, our spiritual standing, our spiritual imperfections. When we come face to face with our reality and we get a little depressed, whether it's through our inner sin, whether it's through challenges around us, whether it's through tragedies and catastrophes that we've all experienced, how can we find joy after it all made sense to us? I need something else to pick me up. And here we begin chapter 33 with the following picture. The Alter Rebbe brings us back to our roots, to this beautiful meditation, where he helps us understand that nothing else exists other than God himself. When we say the Pledge of Allegiance, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Hear O Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. We mean to say not only that God is the only God. That's obvious. What do you think? You think that the tree is a God? You think that the idol is a God? Nobody thinks that an idol is a God. Come on. What we mean to say, not only that God is the exclusive God, what we're saying is that God is the exclusive being. Nothing else exists other than God. That is something incredibly powerful, which we need to understand. What do you mean, Rabbi, that nothing else exists about God? You mean nothing else exists other than God? You mean I'm not here? The table is here. The house is here. Right here in chapter 33, the Alter Rebbe reminds us of what we've already learned, by the way, in chapter 20, 21 of Tanya, earlier. That nothing else exists other than God. God is exclusive, not only as the exclusive God, but God is also exclusive as the exclusive being that exists. Nothing else exists other than God. And I'm going to share with you why. Do you remember how God created this world? It's at the very beginning of Genesis in that beautiful narrative. The Torah was telling us a story. Why was the Torah telling us a story of creation? In order that we would be able to picture the scene. When someone tells you a story, you're able to vividly paint pictures in your mind. And I want you to paint the following picture. I want you to imagine nothing. Just total black. There's nothing before the world was existing. And except for God, obviously. And now God opens with a verbal statement. He speaks the world into existence through his speech. God says, let there be light. It was God's speech that brought the light into existence. There were 10 utterances, no more and no less. Just 10 utterances in the narrative of Genesis, in the story of creation with which God created this world. Let the earth sprout forth vegetation. Let man dominate upon the creatures of the earth. These are the 10 utterances with which God created the world. Since the world was created through God's speech, it becomes apparent to us that all of creation is dependent upon God's speech. Remember what we've learned, the doctrine of perpetual creation. We've learned that everything in this world wants to return to its natural state of being. Nothing wants to stay away from its default setting. If you take nothing and you turn it into something, if God's speech takes nothing and turns it into an existence, it wants to go back to a state of rest, to a state of nothingness before it was changed by God's speech. Therefore, in order for it to continue to exist, God needs to perpetually recreate the world by perpetually verbalizing the instruction of creation. God in his kindness, perpetually every day, he recreates the acts of creation. God needs to recreate the world at every single moment in time, because if God was not to create the world at every moment in time, it would revert back to a state of nothingness. I want you to picture that scene for a moment. I want you to think for a moment what it would mean that if God stopped creating you at this very moment, if God decided to catch his breath, so to speak, not that God needs to catch his breath, God is infinite, but imagine God wanted to take a break and he wanted to stop talking you into creation, talking me into creation. If God wanted to stop creating me at this very moment, I would simply not exist in the next moment. Nothing would exist if God wouldn't speak us into being at every single moment in time. If not, I want you to see what that looks like. I want you to feel the fear. I want you to feel the anxiety of not being certain that you're going to exist in 2 seconds from now, or 5 seconds from now, or 5 minutes from now. If God decided to pull the plug on you, quite literally, and stop speaking you and me and this United States of America into existence. If God was to simply stop, we would not exist. It's like a hologram. It's like a television. Think of a television screen. You know, as long as the cable is plugged into the wall, you've got a beautiful movie. You can watch Netflix, you can watch whatever you want to watch, the news, the 8 o'clock news, no problem. But the moment someone pulls out the plug, not 10 seconds later, not 2 minutes later, but that instant, the moment someone pulls out the plug, bam, there is no image on the screen. There's no electricity running through. There is no image on the screen. If God was to pull the plug on every one of us, we are all like television screens. As long as God creates us, we continue to exist. As long as the electricity is flowing, the energy is flowing from God, the verbalization, God verbalizing us into existence, we're all good. But the moment that God decides to stop creating us, he literally pulls the plug, bam, we are returning to our natural state of being before we were created, a state of nothingness, and nothing exists. Once we make peace with this concept, friends, we realize that just like the TV relies on the power supply for it to exist, you and I rely on our power supply, on God's word, in order for us to be able to exist. And now we become extremely dependent. We realize, oh my God, quite literally, OMG, you realize, if not for God, I would not exist. You realize I'm grateful for God, who literally makes an effort to create me and my world at every single moment in time. Now, the Alter Rebbe in chapter 33 takes us a step further. He says, but you know what speech is? One word that I speak is nothing compared to my ability to speak. If I say Charlie Brown right now, that word Charlie Brown, irrelevant as it was to the purposes of this conversation, that word Charlie Brown is nothing compared to my ability to speak potentially infinite amounts of words. And certainly that word Charlie Brown is nothing compared to my ability to think words, which is the origin of my speech. But even within my power to think. I have letters. The Alter Rebbe explains that our ability to think, which powers our ability to speak. Our ability to think originates in our emotions. Remember, we have our soul. We spoke earlier in Tanya. Our soul is made up of 10 attributes, 3 intellectual and 7 emotional attributes. There is our intellect and our emotion, which is our 10 soul attributes. In how we feel, you don't feel in a language. If you love someone, you don't love them in French or love them in Spanish or love them in Hebrew or in English. If you hate the sight of blood, then you don't think of blood in a language. You don't think of B-L-O-O-D. You just think of an emotion. It's a feeling that you feel. It's a repulsion or an attraction or an excitement or an anxiety or a fear. These are emotions that are way removed, far higher than any letters or language. So the word Charlie Brown that I spoke is nothing vis-a-vis my ability to speak. And certainly it's nothing vis-a-vis my ability to think. And how much more so is it nothing vis-a-vis my ability to feel, my soul power. Now, when we apply that speech, the metaphor of God's speech in the biblical narrative, you realize that the Torah is telling us a fantastic story here. This is the greatest story ever told, that God spoke the world into being. What that's telling us is the secret to the universe. It's telling us that our existence is totally dependent, codependent upon God's word, and that God's word that creates me is nothing compared to God's ability to speak, which is nothing compared to God's ability to think, which is nothing compared to God's ability to feel. Remember, we're created in the image of God, right? We thus begin to realize that we're not even a blip on the radar compared to God's essence. Just like the word Charlie Brown that I spoke 5 minutes ago is long gone, vanished. Nobody even remembers it. It's just like a whiff of air. So too, God's creating you and I this moment is just like that Charlie Brown word that I spoke 5 minutes ago. Just like that word has no bearing, no value compared to me, so too our existence is like that word Charlie Brown. Is nothing compared to God's essence. Think of the television screen. Think of one screen grab on a television screen. On this television screen, as you're watching me right now on YouTube or on Facebook, think of the fact that you see me right now on the screen, but if not for your power supply, if not that you have battery, well, let's assume that you're plugged into the wall without a battery, because a battery is the same idea, right? But assuming that I'm plugged into the wall right now, if not for the power supply putting me on your screen, I wouldn't be there. So my presence on your screen is completely dependent on the power supply. But that power supply, like speech, is nothing compared to the Hoover Dam, which can produce limitless amounts of energy. Right, just to apply that metaphor. And you begin to realize that we are nothing compared to God. The fact that it seems to us the opposite, the fact that it seems to us that we do exist and that God does not exist, that I can't see God, but I can see and feel me, that's because we live in a world that the Kabbalah calls Alma de Shikra, a world of lies. This world is a world of lies. That's why it looks like it's topsy-turvy, that I exist and God doesn't. When you leave this world, we call it we say that our souls, the souls of our loved ones, went to Olam HaEmes, the world of truth. There in the world of truth, they see the truth. You know, there's a story in the Talmud of a Talmudic sage, I think his name was Rabbi Yaakov, who had an NDE, a near-death experience, and he died for a little bit. Then he came back. When he woke up, the sages of the Talmud turned to him and they said, "No. So what did you see?" And he says, it was amazing. Olam hafuch ra'isi, he says in Hebrew. I saw an upside-down world. What did he mean? those who were precious in this world were not important in the next world. And those who are not important in this world were precious in the next world. What I understand him to be saying was, different levels of interpretation, but my understanding within the context of Tanya chapter 33 is that our ego, which is so important in this world, was nothing in that world, in the world of truth. And God, who is considered persona non grata in this world, was obviously center stage and on the pedestal in the world of truth. So we have to make peace with the fact that we live in a world which is a world of lies. And philosophically, it just makes sense. The way that we just explained this idea absolutely makes a lot of sense. It's not, you don't need a PhD to understand this idea, friends. It's really not, it's not, you know what I mean? It's not something which you need to go to college for. It's something which we can understand from the metaphor of our television screens, relying on the power supply. And from the metaphor of our existence, relying on God's ability to create it. Everything wants to return to its natural state of being, unless a greater force continues to be applied upon it. The moment that greater force is removed, the thing returns to its natural state of being. You take nothingness and you turn it into something. Like the biblical narrative, God took nothing and he turned it into something. We who are a something want to return to a state of nothing. The only reason we're not returning to a state of nothing is because God is creating you and I and everything else at every single moment in time. This is the doctrine of perpetual creation. This is God who continues to create the universe at every single moment in time. And it is with this meditation that Tanya chapter 33 begins to inspire us to joy. Because why? Why does this bring us to joy? The reason this brings us to joy, because we realize that God is all around us. God is everywhere. In fact, I have nothing to be afraid of because I am in a divine embrace. I am literally hugged by God at every single moment in time. If God was to stop supporting me, if God was to stop hugging me, I would literally cease to exist. It is this meditation, this realization, that helps us understand that the greatest power in the universe is your best friend. God believes in you more than you believe in yourself. God supports you, creates you, loves you, cherishes you, and embraces you, not only through the good weather, but through the bad weather too. Through the good times and the bad times. You've never stopped existing since you were born, right? It means that God created you. God carried you through the most beautiful times, as well as through the most difficult times as well. You know, there's a beautiful story of a person who leaves this world and he goes up to heaven. And when he gets up there, he's shown a video of his life. It's a metaphor. He's shown a video of his life and he sees something remarkable. He sees that wherever he walks in his life, everything that he goes, everything that he does, he notices two sets of footprints. So he looks and he asks, God, who's watching this video, this very interesting movie with him, and he says, God, who's that other set of footprints? What's going on over here? I mean, who's the other guy? And God says, that's me. I'm walking with you wherever you went. But then when the guy looks closely, he's horrified as he notices the time when he lost his job, when he got divorced, when someone very close to him died. He notices the crises in his life and he's shocked to see not two, but one set of footprints. And he says, God, where were you In the most difficult times when I needed you more than anything else, I see that you abandoned me. There's only one set of footprints. And there God responds to him and he says, it's not what you think. Those times when you were most vulnerable, those times of crises, the reason you see just one set of footprints is because at those times, I carried you on my shoulders. Friends, this is such an empowering meditation. When we realize that our entire existence is wholly reliant, completely dependent upon God's love, God's confidence, and God's effort in creating us. If God wasn't to create me at every single moment in time, I would simply cease to be. God cherishes and carries me through the most difficult of times. You're never, ever alone. How empowering. How encouraging. How beautiful is this meditation? And if we just be able to embrace this observation alone, we would be able to recognize the presence of God everywhere around us at all times. To realize that God is always with us, that we are never ever alone, and that we are totally reliant upon God to the exclusivity of all else. In fact, God is the only thing that exists. Everything exists only by virtue of God creating it at any time. Everything is dependent on God, wholly dependent on God at every single moment in time. We realize that nothing else exists other than God. When we realize this meditation, this one meditation alone, nothing else, this is the essence of Judaism. This is what's going to power our 613 commandments, every aspect of Judaism. It was the prophet Habakkuk in the Torah who said the following. It says that there were 613 commandments, but the prophet Habakkuk came and he established them on one basic foundation. One foundation which carries everything else. What is that foundation? The foundation of faith. If we can only embrace and understand the meaning of faith. What is the meaning of faith? What we've just explained. Not that there is a God. That's obvious. Not even that there is only one God. That's also obvious. The definition of faith is that there is only God and nothing else exists. The definition of faith is that God is not only the only God, but that God is the only being that exists. If we can make peace and embrace and accept that notion, the true meaning of faith, we will have been able to become true believers, so that the other 612 commandments will automatically flow from this one basic foundation. This is the essence of Judaism, friends. This is the foundation of it all. If you can make peace with the fact that nothing else exists other than God, with the basic meditation of the doctrine of perpetual creation, if you can accept that nothing else exists other than God, you will automatically be drawn to God with powerful feelings of love, of gratitude, of appreciation and joy. And you will seek ways to connect deeply with God and to fulfill the will of God. This, my friends, is the essence of Judaism. And now look at these beautiful words, which are said at the very beginning, what captures this entire meditation. The 11th of the 12 universal verses that the Rebbe instituted to teach to all Jewish boys and girls. The 11th of the verses goes as follows. All of my kids know these verses. V'zeh kol ha'adam on page 372 in the second paragraph. And this is the whole purpose of man. It's a quote from Ecclesiastes. And that was the end of the quote. This is the whole purpose of man. And now the Alter Rebbe continues, and the reason for which man was created, and also the reason for the creation of all the worlds, the upper and the lower worlds, to have for God a home in the lower worlds, because God wanted to be recognized as king in this world, which is lowly because it's spiritually dark. Lowly because God is not obvious and not apparent in this world. It is when we meditate upon the idea that we just discussed. It's upon when we come to the realization in our mind's perception that there is nothing else other than God. It's then that we have created for God a home in this world. Where did we do that? Not in the city squares, not by building huge buildings, not with billboards, but in the most precious piece of real estate on planet Earth. And that is in the 1 square foot, maybe a little bigger than that, which is your head. If you can make your head a place where God is perceived, where God is appreciated, felt, understood, and admired, then you will have made for God a home in this world. That is exactly what the Alter Rebbe is telling us in chapter 33. You can fulfill the purpose of your existence in this world, the purpose of the creation of all the worlds, and the creation of the higher world and the lower worlds, right here, right now, in these 30 minutes. By simply meditating upon this idea, the doctrine of perpetual creation, how nothing else exists other than God, and coming to peace and joy with the fact and realization that God is embracing me at all times. And I am so grateful for the master of the universe, the creator of all things, who chose to create me and continues to choose to create me at every moment in time. Nothing else exists. I and you are never alone. This, my friends, is the meditation which I'm going to leave you with today. I'd like to ask you to share this video with your friends on Facebook, please. Like the video. Subscribe to our channel at facebook.com/Jewish Gardens. Also at youtube.com/Jewish Gardens, where you'll find the archive of all of our Torah study sessions. I'm grateful for you joining me today. And please send me your questions and comments. Send me an email to rabbi@jewishgardens.com. That's rabbi@jewishgardens.com. I would love to hear from you. Chapter 33, like I said to you, is one of my all-time favorite chapters of Tanya. We'll continue next Tuesday. A little bit deeper. We'll do it inside the text to be able to understand exactly what's going on over here, to see this in the powerful words of the Alter Rebbe. In the meantime, I want to give you the next few days to review this video, to meditate upon it, to think about it, so that by next week, Tuesday morning, you'll be able to approach the text of the Tanya of chapter 33 with greater clarity and a solid foundation to be able to understand the earth-shattering revolution that this chapter brings to our lives. Thank you very much, everybody. Shalom. And a quick reminder that tonight at 8 o'clock, we'll be holding a special class called Pandemics Through Jewish History. We'll be talking about the Jewish approach to pandemics. This is not the first pandemic we've ever experienced. Let's learn the lessons of our history. How have Jewish communities reacted to pandemics throughout Jewish history? Interesting anecdotes and stories, as well as directives and guidance that our ancestors have given us from the Torah, as well as from our more recent sages. All happening tonight on Zoom. That's jewishgardens.com/Zoom at 8 o'clock tonight, as well as on Facebook at facebook.com/JewishGardens/live. That's facebook.com/JewishGardens/live. A special thank you again to Corey, who sponsored today's Torah study in honor of her birthday and in honor of Brett, her son's birthday. Mazel tov to you, a year of health and happiness. You can sponsor more videos daily, weekly, and monthly at jewishgardens.com/donate, as well as, or by calling the office at 561-624-2223. That's 561-624-2223. Thank you very much. Shalom, and have a wonderful day.